So I'm not sure how I'm going to get to upload them now. I lost the other one, so it'll be just, I'll have to make them like 1, 2, and 3. I ended up dropping the phone a little bit. So I know that when you're letting through more air, and even though it's going through the tube, so it takes a little bit longer for the map sensor to react, as if it was compared to as if I was taking off the PC valve. It's a very short distance. This is maybe 6 to 10 inches up into the intake, so it's a little bit longer for it to affect the suction on the map sensor. But I'm going to slowly release it. You can hear the change in the exhaust sound. Okay, right there is probably the best I can get on it. You can hear the RPMs kicking up. You can hear the exhaust pushing out more. That's the map sensor kicking in. Get my hand here. Suction on my finger is getting a little bit strong. Okay. Let it recover itself there. Just want you to get an idea of being able to play around with the different points into the, for changing the air. As if this was a carbureted car, you wouldn't have to be fighting that damn map sensor. Strictly computer. And you wouldn't have to fight the map sensor. It's really the computer you're fighting because of the idiotic program they got in there. This thing is the time of year, and any other time, even on startup, is when that should be being used. And I showed you how clean that is, and that's with hours and hours and hours of idling. That's from Timonium, Maryland, through Ellicott City at Bill's Towing, up through into a relative in Wisconsin, about off of like 80 west, so about 2-3 hours northward, and then back down and over to Lincoln, Nebraska. So you can see that there's a desperate need for improvement. And again, carbureted alone wouldn't guarantee that you could do it. It depends still on your engine design, the intake design. But with all of them, there's going to be. Now, if I had that open just that much with the EGR, this is really not picking up the exhaust gases. That's just adding more air in, and so it's affecting the map sensor, and then so it's changing the voltage, and it sends back to the computer, and the computer says, oh my God, I'm getting more air. It's not that ape shit 14 to 1. Or Draco shit 14 to 1, or Mullock shit 14 to 1. That's all a crock of shit. Like the thing to do with the test for men and the prostate, which actually is somehow twisted around from some kind of test to do with women. The stoichiometric ratio is a crock of shit in how it's being used, relevant to a better fuel economy. And simply anyone who studies their theory is going to know, well, they're completely full of shit. It's just absolute marketing lies to get you caught into hype instead of asking basic fundamental questions like, what am I going to get for fuel economy and why is it so goddamn crappy? So I can feel some there. I'm going to get the temperature probe out and take a feeling on it and see what we've got going on here. Okay, so I showed this in the other one. You see it there at the top. So really not that warm because the engine coolant temperature. Take it down here right at the metal. You see the engine coolant temperature is still depending on what spot I get it. I'll take it up to here. I mean, of course, we're still dealing with external temperatures and the heat loss to the open air. but that's not really that hot. There you go. There you can see what it's running at there. Let's check it up through. Yeah, that matches up into there by comparison. So that's really not as hot as you would expect for coming off the exhaust. Granted, it's only a ½ inch. It's not even as hot as that. There, it's a little better there, but you know, that's actually retaining the heat in that nut. Now let me put it into the stream. There you go. Get it into the stream of the air, and you can see even the stream of the air is not that hot. Now let me hold that under the armpit and put my hand there. I can hold my hand over that exhaust, so even though it's reading higher like that, the actual exhaust stream there, it's like, it feels smaller than here at this level of idle, which this is not completely closed off, as you can hear. Just that little bit of air, how quickly it increases. And so it increases in temperature maybe 20-30 degrees with that increase in the RPM. But just, I don't know if it's plugged down in the line there or in coming out of the head, but it's for sure, it is not that hot. I'm really shocked. So it's still going to be beneficial into the intake, because that initial heat coming off there is going to be faster than what you're going to have for your bringing up the whole block through the engine coolant. So we at least know that it is pumping through there, but you see I'm putting my finger and closing it off. So even though that point here claims to be that hot, it's so cold in the ambient air, and it's certainly not as cold as it can get, or what they're claiming it's going to get, but it's just very quickly losing heat. I've got my finger here, notwithstanding that this scanner is really not that accurate. So let's do it again. I'm going to get it set up first. Let's try to get it there. And to me, there's no way that that can be that hot. Let me check. That's what it's claiming. But honestly, I got to tell you, I think that's, oops, there we go. I think that's full of shit. That airstream coming out of there only feels like maybe in the 70s. Yeah, look at what it's showing there. So that's more of like a heat density in those sections. The actual airstream, I can hold my hand in it. And so with my hand in that exhaust stream, as it is right there, that is, it ain't gonna be like feeling at the back at 55, 60s, I'd say 70s, maybe into the 80s maximal. So surprisingly, it's not much of a volume, and it's not that warm. So no matter what that scanner is reading, if it was that hot in the airstream, there's an exhaust stream here, I could not have my hand in that. Because the temperature for the human body is at plus or minus 117 degrees, and that's where your nerves say it's too hot and you can't hold your hand there. Now down here, it's feeling warmer, but again, look, I'm not immediately springing my hand off it. So I got a bad feeling it might be plugged up down in the head or down in the through the tube, but it's pushing some through, but unfortunately it's kind of worthless. So obviously the more I open up the valve with them connected, then it's going to be able to pull more through, but I'm surprised that there's just not a lot more coming up that tube. So this kind of gives you an idea also about exhaust designs. Certainly it's giving me an idea about exhaust design that, oh my God, how critical a difference perhaps it is for an exhaust design to properly vent the engine so that it can act as a pump. And again, I just, let me touch it. Okay, underneath there, that's definitely over 117. This reading here cannot be off of that. It's got to be either off of here or off the tube. Because here, again, that temperature coming off there, and even my finger sitting right there on the metal, right here to there, there's no way that that's 180. Unless it's scanning down into the material but I'm pressing down on it and it's not burning me. But if I put my fingers underneath this tube, it's burning me. So we know underneath that this is plus or minus 117. In fact, this here on the coupling from the engine to the bell housing is hotter than any of this right in here. Yeah, this is still, and having this open for a little bit. The front runner there is warmer than this one is now without that coming through there. So I'm going to assume that's between the throttle body having the coolant coming through there to warm up the air some, which is good, and just the heat of the engine raising up. And just here, we're connecting to the engine. That's the type of temperature I would expect to feel coming out of the exhaust. I can't hold my hand down on that section there too long. It's very quickly where the junction is from the engine to the bell housing there. And the rectangular area here, it's just too hot. But this exhaust stream, definitely not more than in the 80s. I'm putting my finger on there and blocking it off and holding it. So it's either an indication of a piss poor design, and maybe in this case, that's all you can get. And then, so it's obviously going to be dependent upon the vacuum. But as soon as you open up too much, that's when you get the you get the rock. It's like same as here. When I open this up more, it has nothing to do with the EGR itself. Good, but in this case, there's so little coming through there. Even when I increase the air take there, it runs so rough because of that damn computer trying to add in more fuel. I'm going to do it completely. That is definitely a map computer situation. It throws off the readings in the map, and then the computer gets confused how to reference the situation. It's like I said, I saw it when I was pulling off the PCV hose, and it started doing the same thing, that surging, dying, surging, dying, surging, dying. Now let me take you to the back. Actually, one more thing here. I didn't check this here with the hood open. It's not going to be that hot. It was as high as 211 before, excuse me. Now that same point is only 105 by comparison. But I also don't have the inverter on. I'll make that as a separate video. That is that's been a very successful inverter for one of the Harbor Freight tools. That app, in fact, has been very good. All right, so I'm going to carry you around to the back. Two things I want to throw in there. I want you to see the absolute shitload of water. See that tracking down there? Okay, that's from one of the leak points there. And here's the second one. That's all now extra blown out there. And you can already see that it's starting to congeal. And there you can see the difference between, that's probably still blowing over that oil patch. I thought there was maybe blowing out with it, but then it should be out here, all the way out to here. And let's get that distance. I'd say that's at least 8 feet. That it blew it back when it's racing up like that. When I pull the shorts out of the upper tube there, carrying into the intake plenum. So you can see just how much water is in that fuel, and then depending on the air mixture. So you've got to all be checking your fuel out, and that is a premium fuel, guys. That is a premium fuel. So here you can see still not completely frozen, but you know, in the sun it warmed up. But now we're already at sunset, so you can see the temperature, and I'll give you a scan on it there. This is what we're dealing with for that temperature there, and that one you can see more frozen. Go on the other side a little bit. See the difference there. This from there to there. The thermographic differences, and you can see that that's still not completely frozen, but So those are some of the temperatures we're dealing with right now. It was I was picking up a -6 to -8 off the concrete when I was doing it last night. All right, so I don't know what else to put on this very long. I apologize. I'm not going to do any editing on them. I'm not good enough at all that right now. You're going to have to just, you know, pick and choose through it. Got a lot of work to do. It's a work in progress, but getting a car for $400 anytime from past to present is a better deal, and you got to learn how to make it work. So I'll have to make a different video on that. I don't want to give away all my stuff because I'm not getting sponsors, and I'm really upset about that because the cost of everything, and I still don't have a room, so I'm a little bit pissed off. All right, well, I need help for sure with getting another car because I need to be able to do this engine. I need to be able to rebuild the engine and the tranny. The tranny might be, you know, changing some more of the fluid, cleaning the pan and the filter. If such is the case on this one, I'll have to check and see if it is, because it definitely has a feeling of slipping. The computer, if these wire diagrams I got are right now, then I'll be able to track for what's going on with the EGR and the fuel injectors, and then I still have to make myself a testing rig for the fuel injectors to know what kind of volume's coming through there. And what you can hear up into a point, just like if you had a carbureted car, that just right there, let a little bit more air in there, and you can see it can handle that. And you can hear how much smoother, you got a better RPM, and if I could be back there and smell it, the best I can smell here, we were actually getting leaner. So that means at this point of taking the air in versus where I pulled it off up there at the at the PCV valve, that maybe here we're lucky at that level of increased air that the computer is not putting in any extra gas, because it always fights me. If this was a carburetor, you couldn't get fought like that. However you would adjust it, it would hold that level. I'm going to try and see if I can get it to stay. So you get a very, very limited range of changing it, and then the damn thing gives you a hard time, and it's got to readjust. So maybe that's an extra 500 RPM, I'm not sure. But now it's actually getting much, much warmer, burning my hand, so it's over 117, burning the thumb. But just imagine that the ratio shouldn't be 14 to 1, it should be 20 to 1, 30 to 1, 40, 50, up to 100 to 1 with this gas, depending on the temperatures and the conditions. And conversely, that at idle should be the easiest time having a stationary load, no starts and stops, knowing what your accessories, you've only got 3 accessories turning there, so whatever horsepower they take a piece, the variable of that is not going to be the steering pump or the AC, because you won't have them on, but it's your alternator. So give it a little bit more yet. I've been trying to find another car with the carburetor. It's not that the computer garbage couldn't be better, but they've just intentionally reversed back engineered it to make it less efficient. And they put their theory up on one side when you study it, and on the other side, to the people they're marketing everything to, they lie their ass off. And more fuel when it's cold, which is complete bullshit, because all you're doing is literally doing flame out with your spark, and you're cooling the temperature in the cylinder, which you can compare that to what they call dense charging. And yet, where they upsell the dense charging is that's the way to make more power. And because it makes more power, they get to lie about what's actually going on. It's not because you're putting the more fuel in, it's because under that set of circumstances, at the same time, you're reacting to the atmosphere differently. Not to do with the extra fuel that you're putting in it though, because at that point, the car is changing the timing, and you're getting more air coming in, so you're actually leaning it out. You're leaning it out and changing the timing. And that's what's causing it to run with different power but go at the back end and just stick your nose there and smell what's coming out the ass of your car. You don't have to see any goddamn test equipment or know anything more to realize, oh my God, it's not exploding that, it's not even burning it with the catalytic converters, resonators, mufflers, and all that other shit. So it's a simple little test you can do to prove. I'll make a separate video for that as well. And they're lying their ass off. And it's going to take all years to get these changes, because if you look at some of the earlier cars, getting 30 miles to the gallon, granted they were smaller, that's not a milestone. Okay, that's not a milestone. And then when you do stupid things like putting resistive wires and resistive plugs in there for a computer that wasn't needed in the first place, that only made it more complicated and more expensive. When you put that into the word problem, then there's so many givens there that immediately prove that, okay, it worked before, it got this much miles to the gallon without a computer, and now with all this complicated, expensive garbage that you need, all these special tools and knowledge, and even with that, those are generic codes that it gives you, you still can end up throwing parts at a car and not get it fixed right. And minute changes in voltage will so drastically alter otherwise functional equipment that they don't communicate effectively. Throws the computer off, throws the sensors off, and it's just a big bad mess. When you didn't have all that with the carburetor systems. And you had automatic, but you didn't have automatic control by the car. Now look at how much that's going up. I can feel the temperature burning my thumb. There we go. Now you've reached the point where it's got to reset itself if it doesn't die. All right, so that's pretty long. Sorry about that. I don't know what I'll call these. I'll upload them, and I got to warm up. I got to get some heat on. And I got to get on to other things. So I'm going to get this, I'll just clean it out a little bit since I got it all off and throw it back on there. But this was the problem when I got it. It heats up like mad hot, like it's fighting itself is what I believe it's doing. And what I found inside the wiring harness, I don't know who the hell did this wiring harness, but they went from 6 separate leads at the ECU to motor bay pins, and they, for about a foot to 20 inches, they went down to a single lead, and then of those 6 leads, 2 come over to the yellow on the EGR, and 4 is splitting up to the different injectors. So part of the reason I believe it doesn't run fuel efficient is because there's enough change in the impedance without 6 separate power pins coming through that it's affecting the way that the injectors are being able to be pulsed. Granted, the pulsing is from the ground side. Still, if the power is not properly coming across, you're not going to make a complete circuit the same either. I don't know that for certain, but I feel it's a fairly good, strict, educated, somewhat experienced guess looking over at the sensitivity of the electronics, how quickly it can change things. So even if the injectors aren't leaking, because they certainly didn't look dirty per se, even if the fuel regulators here and over there are working correctly, if that stretch of wire in the harness, and it was completely wrapped, so I thought at first it was from factory, and I thought, oh my God, the color coding doesn't match from the ECU out. But when I was in the junkyard, the color coding from the ECU to the motor bay, from the motor bay did not match either. And that was still a completely wrapped harness. So the odds of 2 separate cars at 2 separate times, not even thinking about it, that has to be coming from the factory like that they're not color coded the same. So it's very possible that the way that is so shittily done inside, someone would have been like a newbie or stoned out of their gourd, and they are just under a time frame and said, oh fuck, let me splice a wire piece in here, work with the lines since they're coming off of the injectors, back up in here, put a piece of wire, and from 6 to 1, and 1 back out to the 6 to the respective pins. But I don't know that they got even the pins right then. So you would think the way that it's running that at least that part's correct, but again, that still doesn't say that the injectors aren't being affected by the change in impedance from a section of wire, even as low as 6 inches to 20 inches in length, carrying 6 currents, 6 voltages for 6 relatively sensitive devices. I think that's a very, very good comparison to check that I'm accurate, that is affecting the performance of my injectors with otherwise potentially still good equipment. Now I do think that the injectors are potentially leaking, because when I put in a quart of that Lucas fuel tank and fuel line injector cleaner, I was getting seemingly bad globbing of fuel after that. So that made me think, something might be wrong with the injectors then. So they could be hanging up, leaking in that way, or they could just plain be worn because it's closer to 158,000 miles now. And I got it around, I don't know, I don't remember now, but tons and tons of idling on it. All right, this is long, I apologize, so I'm gonna get these uploaded. Ciao.